All right, let's start with something non-Thunder related. Let's start with some TV. Uh, the second, or the second season, Shrinking is back on Apple TV. One of my favorite shows on Apple TV. Brandon, Michael, have you guys seen it?
I have not.
I have not. I had heard about it like in passing, but I haven't even like seen a clip of it, to be honest with you.
It's a great show. Jason Segel, Brandon. It has Harrison Ford, so you'll love it.
It has Harrison Ford, which is why my answer was no. I have not seen it.
One of Harrison Ford's best performances, I'd say. He's been excellent in the show.
I mean, the bar is not very high for that. For those that don't know, I'm a big Al Pacino fan, and there leaves little room for other actors in my life.
I understand that. I'm very familiar with your feelings on Harrison Ford, but all that aside, I highly recommend watching it. It tells the story of Jason Segel's the main character. He loses his wife to a drunk driver. He's also a therapist, and so it is a comedy drama, but it's the kind of show that you watch. It makes you feel better about humanity. It makes you happier, like all kinds of positive things by watching the show, even though it's got some drama, it's got some sad moments. And, spoiler alert, plug your ears if people don't like spoilers. In this season, Harrison Ford's character, and I think he's done a great job of it, is dealing with Parkinson's. So great show. Highly recommend it to everybody who has Apple TV. And if you don't have Apple TV, it's worth subscribing to Apple TV to watch this show.
All jokes aside,
go ahead.
I have heard great things about Shrinking, and Apple TV has a lot of great shows that are underrated. So I have no doubt that it probably is a very good show. It is on my list.
I'm glad you're keeping an open mind. Blade Runner is one of my favorite movies, so I'm a little bit more open-minded to Harrison Ford than Brandon, it sounds like. But just reading up on it, created by Bill Lawrence, and then you said like drama, comedy. One of my all-time favorite shows is Scrubs, so if that's anything similar at all, I'm going to guess it's not as goofy as Scrubs, but if it has that same element of like drama and comedy, I'll definitely check it out.
Welcome back to the Daily Thunder podcast. I'm John Napier, publisher of Daily Thunder, and I'll be your host today. Alongside me is Daily Thunder beat writer Brandon Rahbar, and back again is a Thunder independent beat reporter, Michael Martin. Brandon, Michael, how are you today?
Doing great.
Doing well. Glad to have Michael back on the show today.
Yeah, he did so good last time. We had to bring him back.
That's always better than not being brought back because it was so bad. So I'm very appreciative. I was very excited to get the call text back.
Yeah, that list is a lot longer, Michael. The ones who are not brought back.
Well, and this is sort of a natural segue because we have Michael back and we have JDub back. So the Thunder, I'd say, managed okay without Shai, AJ, JDub not having a creator or a ball handler. They were competitive in those two losses to the Spurs and the Rockets, but they ultimately dropped both. And JDub returned against the Lakers in typical Thunder fashion on the injury report, suddenly not on the injury report. But Brandon, we'll start with you. What are your early reviews of JDub's first game action back?
It was a great game back. The Thunder do not win that game against the Lakers without JDub. I know that he started off slow, not in rhythm as far as his shooting goes in the first half, but his defense was there from the jump, obviously, plus just the gravity of having JDub out there and how that shifts the defense and also gets all the other players back into the roles that they're comfortable with. And then in the second half, and especially the fourth quarter, JDub took over. He scored 10 points in that fourth quarter. It was a close fourth quarter, could have gone either way. And JDub hit big bucket after big bucket. He hit the dagger bucket that kind of closed it, and then he hit 4 straight free throws to ice the game at the end. So I think that JDub looked great in his first game back, scored 23 points, 10 of those in the fourth quarter. I know he was 6 of 17, but he got to the line a career high 13 times, hit 11 of those free throws. Thunder do not win without JDub back in that game.
Yeah, Michael, you agree? And also, do you think that we'll start to see JDub's minutes increase before the break, or do you think they'll kind of keep his minutes limited over the next few games?
I think that they're going to side towards caution, probably keep it a little bit limited, but I was also impressed from what we saw. Mark has talked a lot about it, but Dub does everything on the floor, so even if he's not bringing the scoring like he was in the first half, you can see how he impacts the game, whether it be his pace, just setting guys up like Brandon talked about, the defense, the rebounding, everything he does. It sort of just like gives you more reason to believe like, okay, he's going to get it to turn around here in a little bit. And then, of course, down the stretch, he was just nails over and over and over again, which has just been something the Thunder lost their last couple of games. As we know, not having a ball handler and not having a ball handler late in games is just a killer. And having him there just facilitate, and then on top of that, his ability to get to the line 13 times, career high, that was really, really impressive. So he's going to continue to shake off the rust. Obviously, you'd rather have him playing than not, but I was curious to hear what he said post-game, and I really liked what I heard about sort of the break almost being good for him in a way of like continuing to rework his wrist and getting some more time to like really, really put time into rehabbing that specifically. But like I said, obviously you'd rather have him playing, but definitely more good news than bad news for Dub. Happy to have him back.
Yeah, and I think he's a difference maker. Obviously, the Thunder have lacked a ball handler and a creator. Having him on the floor is going to be a difference maker in these two games before the All-Star break. And then if there is no Shai after the break, it's picking up the slack there. But about the time the Thunder have been dealing with so many injuries, and again, primarily without Shai, Michael, who has sort of been the standout player that you feel like has been trying to step up and fill the gap and some of the offensive loss there without Shai?
I think there's two. I'm going to go with Case and Wallace, though, between the two. I've been really, really impressed with him. It feels like he's just really taken a leap offensively. You know, Mark's talked a lot about, you know, he came into the league as a ready-made defender, but when he becomes a complete player, like we've seen from him the last few weeks, even going back to like some of the minutes when Shai was there and to whenever he went out and there were just no ball handling, I've just been really impressed with him. I think a lot of people pigeonholed him as sort of just the 3-and-D guy, like no offense, but more like a Lou Dort who doesn't really need to facilitate or pass the ball or dribble the ball. But Kaysen once again is showing flashes of why we're all super excited about him. So I've been really, really impressed with him.
Yeah, Brandon, what about you?
Yeah, I would agree. I hate to just piggyback on Michael's answer, but I do think that's the right answer. I think that Kaysen in this stretch has really, really stepped up. You know, it is tough when an NBA team is without, you could argue their top 4 shot creators, ball handlers, playmakers, because of course, Shai, Dub, and AJ, but also, you know, Nikola Topic would have been getting serious reps in this spot had, you know, he been on the squad and playing, which by the way, huge kudos to Topic, who I'm sure we'll talk about later, for what he's doing in the G League right now. Just an incredible story. But yeah, Kaysen Wallace, he's kind of stretched his game lately. And it's kind of been a deal, though, where everybody's had to step up. And we talked about that earlier, just playing roles that you're not normally playing on this team. Like everybody has a defined role and they excel in those roles. But, you know, Hartenstein came back. He's kind of a playmaking hub, passing from the post. Jay Will has taken on some of those responsibilities. Caruso, when he's out there, like most of these guys can handle the ball. You know, the Thunder always bring in guys who are at least connective passers and playmakers, even if they're not true point guards or playmakers. Like if that's not their defining characteristic, most of these guys can pass and play high IQ ball. But I do think that it's been Kaysen who's stuck out to me as well during this stretch without, you know, main shot creators or playmakers out there. Even if the whole team has kind of contributed, I think it's kind of been the whole community chipping in type of thing.
Yeah, and I think it's important to kind of note that we have seen some other players step up and try to elevate their game. You know, I want to give a shout out to Isaiah Joe. Joe's been really good this season. I think his consistency shooting has improved from early in the year where he was a little bit more hot and cold. But what stands out to me for Joe is his defensive intensity. I think has been taken up a notch, and he's being much smarter defensively. Like he's getting 2-3 steals a game. now, which is a pretty incredible leap for Isaiah Joe, whose knock on him was he's undersized. He's not a great defender. But I think he's been really focused on being a complete player and deserving of court time for both offense and defense. You mentioned iHeart. He's been great. His passing has been just on point, and it makes a big difference because I think he's the only player on the Thunder who can like truly pass people open, like the way that he leads on a cut, second to none on the team. And so it kind of makes me wonder with some of these players stepping up, and although you have these disappointing losses, including to the Rockets, which I thought the Thunder probably could have and should have won that game. But long term, do you think that this absence without Shai could ultimately be a good thing for the team? Brandon, what do you think?
Yeah, I do. Because everybody's had to stretch themselves and everybody's got, reps doing things, outside of the norm. And I think we saw before JDub got hurt, that game that Shai missed where he played against the Grizzlies on the road and brought the Thunder back. I think that was a big moment for JDub as he's coming back from this wrist injury. And then, leading the team right now in this little stretch before the All-Star break, he's going to be the number one. And that's great for JDub as he's coming back from this injury. He's eventually going to be the number two when Shai is back. But all these guys having to step up and be competitive. And we've seen this team be competitive, even, in those couple games that they lost against the Spurs, particularly like when everybody was out, which is being investigated, which is a whole nother thing, which is completely ridiculous and silly. That was a crew of 5 guys on the roster that were all reserves and 3 two-way players, and everybody stepped up and played competitive ball. I just think that playing in those types of situations for role players, guys off the bench, everybody having to chip in a little bit extra, it's always going to be a good thing for these players. You're going to need guys in the playoffs, and any extra reps you get throughout the season, extra minutes, is ultimately a good thing.
And Michael, before you answer, I want to layer an additional question for you. It seems to me that this might be a good thing for Mark Daigneault as well, to figure out, how do we create offense and consistent offense when we don't have a release valve like a Shai on the court? And it seems like there has been a little bit more fluidity to the offense and some more creativity on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, that's just something that's going to have to happen when you don't have the ability to really beat guys off the dribble, is you have to sort of finagle your ways in different avenues, whether it be, Hart setting up over around the elbows and a lot more cutting, a lot more ball movement. You've got to find different ways. Like we saw at the highest level of Spurs a long time ago, when they, other than Tony Parker and Ginobili, they didn't have a lot of guys who could just beat you one-on-one. So what you do is you really move the ball. The ball's going to move faster than any guy, and that's how you can create open shots. But I agree with Brandon. I think this is great for the guys. I think it's less of just it's going to level them up just overall, as in I think it's going to open up opportunities in sort of individual games for them to really shine. Like Cason Wallace in the last 4 games, he's had his 2 highest scoring games. He has 27 against Denver, 23 against Houston. And I think those are windows to something that could happen in the playoffs, where we see all the time where one role player can swing a game. Aaron Wiggins gets 18 off the bench in game 2 of the finals. That was a huge performance. So I think that'll be good for those guys. And then you've touched on Isaiah Joe, John, and I'm really impressed with him too. Defensively, he's been way more disruptive, like you said. But offensively, he just seems way more comfortable and confident. He doesn't seem like a guy who's worrying about his percentages. He looks way more comfortable taking these tougher threes, which is going to be huge for the Thunder as they go into the playoffs, where these shot windows are going to get really, really close, and guys are going to close out and contest him really, really tight. So you got to be more comfortable taking difficult shots like this. And he's not only looking comfortable taking them, but making them as well.
Yeah, and he's been really good at attacking the basket. I mean, I think he's deceptively sharp when it comes to attacking and sneaking in there and getting dunks that maybe he shouldn't, based upon his size. I've really enjoyed watching Isaiah Joe. But maybe on the other side, I would have expected maybe more Aaron Wiggins, and we haven't really seen that in Shai's absence and with all of the injuries. And then something I've kind of been putting in some of my writing on Daily Thunder is, we haven't really seen the Thunder try to open things up and create Chet as the offensive focal point. And, I'm kind of wondering, and Michael, maybe you have a thought, and then Brandon, why aren't we seeing more aggressive offense from Chet? And why haven't we seen more from Aaron Wiggins?
So the two layers of the Chet thing. One, I think that's just sort of not his MO as a player. I relate him a lot to a guy like Kevin Garnett, who just sort of like finds his own rhythm and finds his own shots. You can draw stuff up for him, but also right now he's turning the ball over too much on a lot of these handling things where he's spinning and turning it over. I think that he still has a lot of growth in that area, and I think he will grow out of some of these things. But I would say those are the two biggest reasons. And then Wiggins, I think he did a good job as facilitating and being sort of the head of the snake, as Mark would say, but he was the guy that a lot of teams were focused on taking out in Shai's absence, so it sort of limited him in a way. But I mean, he gets 20 against San Antonio, he gets 17 against Houston, but I think that's the biggest thing with Chet is just sort of the turnovers, and then just I don't know if that's necessarily in his DNA to just go out there and be a primary scorer.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Here's the thing. Chet is an all-star player. He's going to be all NBA this year. He's top 2 in defensive player of the year running, but he's not like an offensive engine. He's not like an offensive creator, initiator. He can do some of that, which at 7'1", any creation you can get, like creating your own shot, is a big deal. And he can do that. And he can, he can obviously be a great play finisher. But the reason why Chet is an arguably top 20 player in the league is not because he's going to go out there and just create a lot of offense for himself and for others and be the main guy in that sort of way. He'll do some of that, which is great, and he's incredibly efficient offensively. But like Michael said, that's just not really his MO. That's not what he does. That's what makes him a great player, and that's okay because you have Shai, and you have JDub, and you have AJ Mitchell. So, and then Aaron Wiggins, ultimately Aaron Wiggins is a fantastic role player, but he is usually on most nights like the Thunder's 8th or 9th guy. And sometimes you'll see him go off for 40 points or 20 points and he'll be really efficient and knock down a bunch of threes. But, I don't think, typically with role players, you can expect them over a long stretch to be that guy every single night. He'll do that some nights, and that's incredible. But again, it's just when a team is this injured and dealing with this many injuries to the top guys and the roles that those guys play, being the offensive initiators, it's going to make everybody stretch to do a little bit more, but it's going to be hard to get consistent, efficient, high volume production from all those guys that don't normally fill those roles.
Well, another player who I think should be talked about that we haven't mentioned yet is Jared McCain. He's played 2 games now in a Thunder uniform. He's played 28 minutes, taken 12 shots. He's got 12 points. To me, it looks like he's got all the makings of being a microwave type player. Like he can just come out and instantly put up points. And I think in both games, including against the Lakers, he had 5 points like instantly. But it doesn't seem like he's been fully unleashed. He's still getting acclimated to Oklahoma City, to the team, to the scheme. But Brandon, I'll start with you on this one. What are your initial reviews on Jared McCain, and how soon or how far away do you think we are from seeing him like fully unleashed and getting 20 minutes or something?
Yeah, I think he's been great in his, few minutes that he's played so far. It's a small sample size, but just having McCain out there, especially with Isaiah Joe, like that pairing, having 2 sharpshooters out there, you can just see how much the floor opens up, like how much space is out there. They both have gravity, shooting gravity, and Mark talks about that. Like you have to guard these guys. You have to defend these guys wherever they're at, and they both kind of have unlimited range. And so you start thinking ahead to when Shai is out there, like if he's in lineups with McCain and with Isaiah Joe, like the space that Shai could have, especially if he's out there with maybe Dub or Chet, AJ, like the lineups that Mark can trot out there is going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, especially, in McCain's second game, he comes in the second quarter and immediately hits a mid-range jumper and hits a deep, deep 3. in the first like 55 seconds. I think that's just a little appetizer. It's tough to be fully unleashed on this team when everybody's healthy. You got to figure after the All-Star break, as he's getting more and more comfortable in his role, it's going to be harder and harder to find minutes, unfortunately, because Shai's back, AJ's back, the team is fully healthy. But Mark will find minutes for Jared McCain. I think that sort of microwave scoring, a guy that can come in instantly and knock down some threes and space the floor, you're going to find minutes for him. You're going to play him. I just don't know what the rotation is going to look like going forward when this team is healthy, because we are getting to a spot, especially if, and I'm just throwing this out there, nobody knows this. We don't know when or if Topic will play with the main team this season. But if they try to find some minutes for him eventually, if that happens, the Thunder have players 1 through 14 who really can play real NBA minutes every single night. The only one who's not included there is Thomas Sorber because he's out for the year. But you go up and down the roster, like Kenrich Williams deserves minutes. Jalen Williams, J. Will deserves minutes. Jared McCain deserves minutes, like up and down this roster. So it'll be tough, but that's why Martin Daigneault is a coach of the year. He'll find minutes for these guys.
Yeah, Michael, what are your quick reactions on McCain? And I think we were talking about this before we got started here on the pod. And what do you think about his defense so far? Because that's sort of been his weakness or his not coming into the season.
I think he's solid. I think it's going to take some time to adjust to the Thunder's scheme and how they like to do stuff. I know Chet talked before about some miscommunications, but he's got the right mentality about it. I put him in a similar bucket to a guy like Isaiah Joe, who you mentioned earlier, really improving defensively. Joe's a little bit more lanky and long, whereas McCain's more stout defensively. But I think that, if you're the worst guy on the Thunder's defense in any given lineup, that's not usually a bad thing. Like Shai is a lot of times the worst defender, and I mean that in a complimentary way, where I think Mark said the other day, I looked to my bench and then there was an all defensive team right there. So why don't I just sub them in when we need to get some stops? But McCain's been good. He's been a plus 22 in these 2 games. I think just the element Brandon talked about of just the shooting and the gravity that he has, because he's a guy who can really, I said this on a video that I recently dropped, but McCain to me is the most well-rounded 3-point shooter the Thunder have had since Paul George, in terms of he can do it all. Step back, off movement, the super deep threes, off the bounce. Anything you want, he can do, and he's going to be really effective at shooting it at like a 38% clip for his career. He also gets to the mid-range. I've really enjoyed that. I think that's a nice element to have. And a point that Brandon made earlier that I'm going to relate to McCain with Wiggins is, he is a guy who can come in and out, and he's going to get some big points on some nights. The Thunder have 3 of these guys you can sort of shuffle through between McCain, Joe, and Wiggins. And that gives Mark a lot of lineup just optionality to go, do you have the hot hand? No. Do you have the hot hand? And just keep switching throughout that. So that'll be good for the rotation. And then as far as his minutes go, I think that's the thing I'd be looking at is, Mark's one great thing about him is he's going to give guys opportunities, and he's not going to give up on guys, but he's also going to ride the hot hand and know when to sort of push and pull. And I think those minutes are going to fluctuate based on matchups. That was a big thing we saw last year in the playoffs, where J. Will plays a ton of minutes in the first 2 rounds against Memphis and Denver, and then hardly plays at all in the conference finals and finals, whereas Kenrich Williams does the complete opposite, where he plays a ton in the last 2 rounds. So I don't know that every single night all these guys are going to play. I think that might be a little bit too much to ask for, but I think Mark is going to do a very good job of knowing when and which buttons to press on a given night.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily have a segment for Topic, but Brandon, since you mentioned him, I think it is worth highlighting. He had a great G League game in his second action back from his cancer treatment, scored 22 points. His distributing was great. I mean, watching the highlights, he looked good. And so you start to wonder, like, maybe we should get him some minutes, some real NBA minutes this season, just to see what he can do on the court. I mean, what do you think, Brandon?
Yeah, he looked legitimately very good. And mind you, this was the second night of a back-to-back. It's just an incredible story. Like, I tweeted this out. Like, just the fact that he was playing, he could have put up goose eggs across the board, zeros in the box score, and it would have been a great story. of like resilience, perseverance, strength for him just to be back and playing after missing his entire first year with an ACL tear. And then, playing some summer league and one preseason game and getting that surprising diagnosis of testicular cancer, going through 3 rounds of chemotherapy, just being on the court was a win. But then he goes out and he's playing really well, especially that second game. 22 points, 4 of 7 from 3, only 20 minutes, 4 assists, 1 turnover, 2 steals, 1 block. And you watch him, he looks the part. Now, obviously, caveats of this is G League. Yada, yada. I get it. But there was a reason why he was considered a top 5 player in his draft before his injury. He's obviously very talented. We have no idea what that means long-term future. It's just an already success story with everything he's gone through, just the fact that he's back. All that said, it would be a lot of fun to see him play with this team. Like, I think at this point, it would be like, obviously, you're not going to see Topic playoff minutes, or anything like that with this deep roster. I mean, probably we said that AJ Mitchell got some burn in the NBA Finals last year, so I shouldn't say that. We don't know that, but you would think that looking forward to next year is when we'll really see Topic really in the rotation. But that said, it would be really, really fun to see Topic get some minutes after the All-Star break and just kind of, maybe some nights here or there, 10, 12 minutes, just to get him some NBA experience going into next season. I very much look forward to seeing Topic play in the NBA whenever that is, and I very much look forward to seeing his ovation from Loud City the first time he checks in.
Yeah, Michael, anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, that's going to be special when we see that ovation. I think that him, knock on wood, we haven't seen this Thunder team completely healthy all season, but if they can get healthy, we're going to see a lot of blowouts I'm expecting in this schedule, or not a lot, but we're going to see some here and there. I think those are the nights when you'd roll Topic out there and just kind of let him continue to shake off the rust. I think that it's a lot to ask to sort of have him jump onto the treadmill of this team trying to compete for a title coming off of what we know he's coming off of. All that being said, it's a great story. We're all very, very excited for him. Whatever he does is a big accomplishment. And really, next year is when we can really get a good sample size of it. But I'm there with Brandon where I'm excited to see him. I don't think it's going to be in some big minute, big role thing. But, either the Thunder get really healthy and maybe they have a couple of wins where they're going to the fourth quarter up by a lot where he can play, or maybe it goes the opposite way. Hopefully not, where this injury bug sort of persists and we get Topic in that way. But either way, I think that they'll roll him out and give him a chance. I just don't think it'll be super, super consistently.
Yeah, but I think we all agree it is great to see Topic back on the court. And again, what a great story in his path to, I think, diagnosis of his cancer and then the treatment and then to see him back on the court. But we talked about the depth of the Thunder, and the depth was tested when they played the Spurs and only dressed 8 players. That game, as you noted, Brandon, led to an NBA investigation. So there has been reporting that the NBA is now looking at the Thunder regarding all those absences during a nationally televised game against the Spurs. The Thunder were competitive in that game. It was actually a good game. So from a fan watching perspective, the outcome was not imbalanced. But I think the question that came to my mind is, You have the NBA investigating teams like the Thunder who have won 41 games, or they have the best record in the NBA. They get more national TVs than basically any other team. And so essentially the scrutiny on them when they rest players is so different than a team like Utah that will sit their starters entire fourth quarters of games they are competitive in and nothing happens. So both of you guys, Brandon, we'll start with you, but what is your reaction to the NBA investigating the Thunder and maybe the double standards that we see with tanking teams?
It's just ridiculous, quite honestly. Okay, some context. This Spurs game was the third game in 4 nights in 3 different cities, second night of a road back-to-back. Just the night before, Isaiah Hartenstein got poked in the eye, and he really did have a serious eye injury. Shai was obviously out with a real ab strain. JDub still hasn't come back at this point. AJ Mitchell, obviously, Thomas Sorber, Topic, all out with injuries. And then you have like Caruso and Ched and Dort, who have been dealing with injuries on and off and not wanting to play on the second night of a back-to-back, especially when all those other guys are out and you're playing the Spurs. And the only policy that the NBA really has on all of this is star players playing on national TV. Well, Chet at this point hasn't been designated as a star player, and the only two that would qualify would be Shai and Dub, and they are out with real injuries that they are out with. So I don't know what there is to investigate. I think it's all pretty silly, especially when you look across the league, whether it be tanking, whether it be, the Jazz playing Lauri Markkanen, and Jaren Jackson Jr. for 3 quarters, and it's either a close game or they're up big, so they sit him the entire fourth quarter, like tanking in that way, or just not playing guys, or like we saw the Lakers last night, did not play LeBron James or Austin Reeves, Marcus Smart, DeAndre Ayton on the second night of a road back-to-back. Oh, and that was a home back-to-back. I'm sorry. But it's second night of a back-to-back against the Spurs. They didn't play their guys. Luka was obviously out. So, are they going to investigate the Lakers? It's all very, very silly, especially given the one last thing here. The Thunder, by the way, have the best record in the NBA. And they don't need, to. Is it better for the Thunder to play these guys or to get some rest and to get healthy when they're dealing with these injuries when they have a little cushion at the top of the West? It's all very, very ridiculous.
Yeah, I think it's just ridiculous, as you're saying. It's the fact of, if you don't want this to happen, stop putting these national TV games on the second night of a back-to-back. Like, the schedule just has to be smarter in that way, because these teams are going to be more conservative on these injuries, and they were all real injuries, as you were talking about. And I just think it's ridiculous, sort of the hand-wringing about this stuff, where it's not, I don't know, I think that it's just a lot of manufactured outrage. There's a lot of big things going on in the league that could be more detrimental if you want to talk about Utah, which, then again, if I'm a Jazz fan, I don't know that I would hate what they're doing. The Jazz are doing what they're incentivized to do, which is try to get the best players available, because Utah, like the Thunder, like Oklahoma City and a lot of small markets, they're not attracting a lot of big-time free agents who can change the course of your franchise. So the Jazz are just sort of playing the hand that they're dealt. But I think that it's more, just going back to the Thunder, that's more of a league scheduling thing than anything else. They're put in a position where it's going to be really, really hard, and the Thunder are looking with the big picture in mind. But I think there's a lot of just hand-wringing and fake outrage, because just that's what Twitter does, and people just want to be upset.
Well, and another thought that came to my mind, and I think we saw this with the lockout season, or was it the strike season, where the season was cut short. I'll ask Michael you to answer, and then Brandon, your reactions on this, but should the NBA season be shortened? Should there be fewer games? Because if you have fewer games, you're going to have more rest for players over the course of the season, and you're probably not going to have as many back-to-backs. You're not going to have as many teams resting players, or probably as many teams having injuries to deal with if you just have a lighter NBA schedule. Michael, agree or disagree? The NBA should reduce its schedule.
They should, but there's a 0% chance of that happening, because nobody wants to give up the money, unfortunately. I think that it would be best for everybody, for the health of the league, to shorten the season, because, like you said, we're seeing a lot more injuries. We're seeing a lot of these things where teams are sitting on back-to-backs and whatever. It would also help for the people who are really up in arms about tanking, where you don't have to watch that as much because the season's shorter. But I think the real, quote-unquote solution that they're going to do to try to salvage some of this, just based on the injuries that we've seen, is they're going to try to slow down the pace of play. Like, the pace of play right now is unbelievable, and just by proxy of playing more possessions, you're more likely to have some injuries, and we're seeing a lot of soft tissue stuff. I'm no doctor, but from reading what people say online who are qualified, they talk about these things like the Achilles, the calves, the hamstrings. It's all wear and tear stuff, which goes back to the pace of play and the amount of possessions they're playing. So I think they should shorten it, but I can't see. I would be shocked if they did.
I think that Michael is exactly right in everything he just said, but I have a very unpopular opinion. I don't want them to shorten the season. I'm just such a basketball junkie and nerd. Like, I'm always bummed when the season ends. And that's whether, you're a fan of a team that doesn't make the playoffs, so it's over in April, or if you're a fan of the team that goes to Game 7 of the NBA Finals and it's over in late June. I'm always bummed when it's over. So I would prefer them to just like lengthen the calendar. And I know that brings about other issues, but I do think there needs to be far fewer back-to-backs, far fewer 3 games and 4 nights, and all those things, because you're going to continue every single season teams resting their guys. They do not want to put their guys at risk for more injury in this compact schedule. Like Michael said, it's never going to happen as far as like reducing the gains because of the money. And that's like everywhere, like everybody involved, nobody wants to lose money. So they're not going to shorten the season. So why not like make the calendar a little bit longer? And I know you run into things like in the summer, lower ratings and things like that. Maybe you can start it earlier, but then I know you compete with football. I get all those things. I don't want less basketball. I want the same amount of basketball, but to be stretched out. So one, teams are less likely to rest players. And then two, injuries are less likely as well.
Sounds like, go ahead, Michael, but it sounds like Brandon wants a year-round season.
Yeah, pretty much.
That'd be great. I think another point that people forget about right now is just where the league is in the salary cap. These guys, the teams are investing like hundreds of millions of dollars in them. They can't just roll them out freely and like risk some of these injuries. Like, you're seeing the consequences of some of these things where it can derail an entire season. It can derail an entire franchise by overextending these guys and playing them too much. And teams are going to do what's best for them as a team. They're not going to do always what's best for the league. So I don't know. I'm with Brandon. I want as much basketball as possible, but if we have to cut out a few games to get even more high quality basketball at the risk of having just less basketball overall, that's something I'd be willing to entertain.
Well, I appreciate the takes on this. We're going to roll into our next segment, which is a blind take rating. So you guys haven't seen any of these takes. What the objective here is, I'm going to give you a take, and then blindly you're going to rank it on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being what you agree with the most, 5 being what you agree with the least. Brandon, you and Michael will have to agree on these rankings, and then we'll see where it all shakes out at the end after all 5 have gone through. So you don't get the benefit of knowing what's next. Now, the next wrinkle in these blind take rankings is they are all, I would say, hot takes in the negative sense against the Thunder. So you're going to have to rank things that I know you're probably going to disagree with. And I think it'll be interesting to see what ends up at number 1 as far as the bad Thunder take you agree with the most. All right. Everybody clear on the rules? All right. And then, for the benefit of time, feel free to add a little color. But since we've got 5 of these, no monologues, please. First take.
I think that was pointed towards me.
It's pointed to no one in particular. I'm just setting the ground rules here. But all right, take number 1. The Spurs going 4-1 against the Thunder is not a fluke. They are the better team, and unlike the Thunder, they play ethical and pure basketball.
Oh, geez.
Michael, Brandon.
There's 2 layers to that.
Yeah. I feel like we're going to give can they all be number 5? Because I already feel like that's 5. What do you think, Michael?
Well, the thing is, like, I'm bracing myself for how crazy these could be, so I was leaning just towards the middle at like 3 or 4, because I think that there is a argument, I don't believe it, but just like, they have beaten them straight up in a lot of these games. They're the better team in this matchup in terms of matchups, mixed fights in the playoffs. The ethical basketball stuff is where it gets a little bit more difficult, so I'm curious where you stand.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think 3 is a good baseline anyways, because like you said, we have no idea like how bad these hot takes are going to be. So just like starting off with 3 in the middle, I think is a good safe ground. Yeah, but I'm with you. The ethical part is where it really kind of goes off the rails, but I'm good with 3.
Okay, that one's locked in at 3. The next take. SGA is the most egregious foul baiter in the NBA.
Okay, I'm going to go 5. I just, if you've seen Luka Doncic play, like there is no argument here. Also the numbers don't back it up and have never backed it up. He's not even top 3 in free throws attempted, despite the fact that he's number 2 in drives per game this year. And before this year, he was number 1 in drives for like 5 years running. So obviously very much disagree. I would be okay with 4 though too, because we could get some pretty nasty takes here.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards 4 just because the fear of the unknown here, but I'm right there with you, Brandon, of like, Luka, Embiid, Brunson, Austin Reeves, Denny Avdia, Trae Young, James Harden. Yeah. Like, there's all these guys where maybe they don't get to the line as much as Shai, some of them, but like the egregious ways in which they do it is just crazy. And yeah, this free throw thing is crazy, but I think that he's far from the worst, I guess, of the accused in this category. So I would go with 4.
All right, 4 it is.
All right, we're locking that one at number 4. Next one, Chet should not have made the All-Star game.
This is how I think he absolutely should have made it. I won't go on a monologue here. Second best player, defensive player of the year, front runner, incredible efficiency. You've got to have a second All-Star on this team. He definitely should have made it. But because there's other good options and we could have a far nastier take, I'll probably put this at number 2.
Yeah, I'm feeling 1 or 2 on this as well, of just like, I can hear the takes and I'm not going to be screaming at you that you're just wrong. Why are we discussing this? Which is very important in this conversation based on the takes we've been grading so far. But yeah, Chet absolutely deserves to be an all-star. I think that a lot of people just look for the all-star game for what it is of being a star-driven game, which Chet has not arrived at that level just yet. And it's more for offensive players. Like, people don't want to see guys like Chet, Gobert, and other like defensive aces out there as much as they want to see the guys who just put up points and put up highlights. So I'm comfortable putting this at 2 or 1, whatever Brandon feels.
Yeah, 1 or 2 is good for me. Do you want to do 1 just because we could get some other really nasty ones?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. All right. So we have 2 and 5 left. Or 2 and 5.
All right.
2 and 5? Yep.
Okay. Yeah, 2 and 5. All right. The next one, this one's more of a larger take than anything in particular this season, but it's bad for the NBA that Oklahoma City won a championship because it rewarded them for stealing the team from Seattle.
And we have our number 5.
Yeah. That's
clear.
This is why we left it open. This is why the insurance policy.
Yes. Yeah, great move. Great move by leaving that 5 open, Michael. Well done. Yes, 5. It doesn't even need further discussion, I don't think. Although I will say this is the one thing I do want to say. I do really feel for Seattle Supersonics fans and Seattle-based NBA fans. And I'm very, very excited and happy that they are very likely going to get the expansion team soon. I'm very much looking forward to that. They'll get the history back, and it'll be like instant rivalry with OKC. So I'm very much looking forward to them getting their team back, because I do feel for the fans and for the people.
Yeah, I agree with you. Seattle deserves to have a pro basketball team, but that doesn't mean Oklahoma City doesn't deserve to have one too. And the way that they lost the team, like, point blank, the owner didn't want to pay for a new arena. And I think there's a lot of blame that goes on Howard Schultz that people don't talk about, of like, Clay Bennett relocates the team, but if you really want to keep the team there, you should sell it to somebody at an even lower price who is Seattle based, who you are for sure has no interest in relocating the team. But hopefully we can just get this out of the way when Seattle gets a team, and I'm sure that all their fans will still be upset. Like Brandon said, there will be just an instant rivalry right there. But to say that it's bad for the league that this happened, I think is ridiculous. I think that having small markets that can also win championships is really good, and we've seen that more in this sort of parity era of the NBA. So yeah, definitely 5 with a bullet.
Yeah, and I think the timing of bringing this take in, I think one reason why I did was because of the announcement that the NBA is going to have 2 expansion teams. It's almost certain Seattle's going to get one. So all's well that ends well, right? And we're happy to have the Thunder in Oklahoma City. And this is a market that has shown they can support an NBA team, loves their NBA team, deserves an NBA team. And I think it's good for the league that the Thunder won one. But that means number 2 is the only number left. And so this take, unfortunately, is very similar to the Spurs one, at least the latter part of it. But this is the take you agree with the second most, is that the Thunder are the worst watch in basketball and their play style is insufferable.
Yeah, I would have had that lower. I would have had that definitely like 3 or 4. Because that's obviously you just not. I don't know how you can watch this team. Shai, his talent is unbelievable, like generational at this point. Going to go down as one of the all-time great scorers. Like aesthetically, so fun to watch. Then you got like this defense that is just hounding, swarming, an all-time great defense. You have all these great role players. And then like the chemistry, like the post-game stuff, like the vibes, like how much fun they have with each other. The fact that they can just like go on these avalanches where they swarm teams with defense and transition offense. Yeah, I mean, I obviously completely disagree with that, but 2, these were all pretty bad takes, so I guess 2 is fine.
Yeah, I think we ranked this appropriately. I would have, I could give or take this between 2 and 3 between the Spurs one, but I mean, I get it from the point of view of like, if I was somebody who's a fan of the other team, like I wouldn't like watching this team. I wouldn't like seeing them just clamp down for big stretches at a time and just cause these droughts and go on these big runs. Shai is one of the dominant scorers in the league. And I think there's a lot of jealousy right now of just how quickly the Thunder have been able to turn this around. But that's the thing with a lot of these dominant teams, is that you're going to have people who dislike them. Like the Thunder or the Warriors were one of my favorite watches for a very long time. And then they were too dominant and they became not fun to watch. And I think that's similar to what's happening with the Thunder right now. You can say that you don't like defensive basketball nearly as much. That's fine. I think that's fair. The Thunder aren't just this beautiful basketball ball movement team on offense. They're more dominated by Shai, but it's still pretty to watch. So I don't think it's egregious. I don't think that they're a hard watch, but I can see why certain people would have that perspective of, some people want to see high flying like football, like Big 12 back in the day. Some people want to see SEC ground and pound. I don't think either one is wrong, but I think this is sort of rooted more so in other fans kind of being upset that their team is losing.
100%. I think it's driven mostly by jealousy. And if I were to say the team that is the most difficult to watch, it is the Lakers when Luka is playing, because it's just a free throw contest.
I would co-sign with that.
Yeah, there's some difficult watches that people aren't looking for on League Pass. I don't know how many people are watching like some of those teams. Like I don't like watching Toronto, just how rough and slow they play and just the lack of ball handling and stuff. Like, so if you really want to get out there and like stake your claim, there are much more egregious teams than the Thunder who play a way more fun brand of basketball that other teams should be trying to replicate.
Well, I appreciate you guys indulging me in this exercise. I'm sure that it was tough for you to try to rank all these terrible Thunder takes, some of them pretty cringy. But hey, we do a lot of different things for content, and I thought this might be interesting. So to recap our blind take rankings of bad Thunder takes, the take you agree with the most is that Chet shouldn't have made an all-star game, followed by the Thunder are the worst watch in basketball. Then the Spurs going forward one against the Thunder is not a fluke. Number 4, SGA is the most egregious foul baiter in the NBA. And the take you agree with the least is that it's bad for the NBA that the Thunder won a championship because it rewarded them for stealing a team from Seattle. Guess you guys feel okay about these rankings. You're never going to feel good about ranking bad Thunder takes though, right?
Honestly, Michael, I think we kind of nailed it. Obviously, these were all bad takes, but as far as ranking bad takes, I think we kind of nailed it.
No, I think that if we did this with full vision, it would look relatively similar. So I'm feeling good about it. I think this is a win in the books for us. So I'll take whatever we can get.
Yeah. And for the audience, I promise you, the panel did not see these before I brought them up today. So these are truly blind tank rankings. And you know what? This is a great way to end the show. So that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Thunder podcast. I'm John Napier, host of the podcast. And today I'm joined by Brandon Rahbar, Daily Thunder beat writer, and Michael Martin, also a Thunder beat reporter. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe to the Daily Thunder podcast on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you like what you hear, do us a favor and leave us a rating and review wherever you get your podcast. And we'll be back in your feed soon.